The lights on Nexus Station never stopped flickering red, blue, green. They danced across the dirty walls like ghosts in the darkness. The last drop was not a nice place to drink, but it was the kind of place where nobody asked your real name or why. You were running from something. Jin-ho stood behind the metal bar wiping glasses that had seen better days. His hands moved in slow circles, cleaning the same spot over and over again, like he had done this 1,000 times before. The glass was already clean, but his hands kept moving anyway. It was something to do while he watched the room. 3 years he had been here. 3 years of pouring drinks and listening to stories from people who had nowhere else to go. The bar floated in empty space between the territories of 3 different alien governments. Nobody owned this place, which meant everybody could come here, even the ones who were not welcome anywhere else at night. The bar was fuller than usual. A group of tall blue aliens sat at the corner table drinking something that smelled like burning metal. They were Valkyrie, and everyone knew Valkyrie were dangerous. Their leader was covered in scars that told stories of many fights. His yellow eyes looked around the room like he was hunting something. Jin-ho had seen many Valkyrie before. They stood 8 feet tall with skin like blue leather and claws that could cut through steel. Most people were afraid of them, but Jin-ho just watched them drink and made sure their glasses stayed full. That was his job. Now just serve drinks and stay quiet. The other customers kept glancing at the Valkyrie table, then looking away quickly. Nobody wanted to attract their attention. A few smugglers sat by the window pretending to read their datapads, but really watching the aliens. A bounty hunter with metal arms drank alone at the bar. Her mechanical fingers tapped against her glass, making tiny clicking sounds. Jin-ho knew all the regular customers by now. There was Mei the trader, who always ordered the same cheap wine. There was Kong the mechanic, who fixed ships and never talked about his past. There was old Su, who claimed he used to be a pilot, but nobody believed his stories about flying through black holes. They were all running from something. Jin-ho understood that better than most people thought. The Valkyrie leader, whose name was Thax, according to the whispers Jin-ho had heard, stood up and walked to the bar. His boots made heavy sounds on the metal floor. Each step seemed to shake the whole room. "Give me another bottle," Thax said in his rough voice. The words came out like grinding stone. His breath smelled like the strong alcohol from his homeworld, and something else, something that reminded Jin-ho of blood. Jin-ho nodded and reached under the counter for a new bottle. His movements were calm and steady, like nothing in the universe could make him hurry. The bottle was heavy in his hands, but he lifted it like it weighed nothing, and Thax watched him pour the drink. His yellow eyes never blinked. They studied Jin-ho like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You are different from other humans," the Valkyrie said suddenly. "Most humans shake when they see us. They smell of fear, but you smell of nothing." Jin-ho finished pouring and slid the glass across the bar. He did not answer questions about himself. He had learned that silence was safer than words. The other Valkyrie at the table laughed at something. One of them said their laughter was harsh and cruel, like breaking glass. Jin-ho had heard that sound before in places he tried not to remember. Thax picked up his drink but did not go back to his table. Instead, he stayed at the bar studying Jin-ho with those hunting eyes. "What did you do before this?" he asked. "Before you came to serve drinks in this dirty place?" Jin-ho started cleaning another glass, even though it was already clean. His hands moved in the same slow circles, but his eyes stayed on Thax. "He served drinks somewhere else," Jin-ho said. Finally, his voice was quiet but clear. Thax made a sound that might have been laughter but had no humor in it too. "Lie," he said, but not angrily, like he was stating a fact. "Everyone here lies about their past. That is why they come to places like this." Valkyrie leader drank half his glass in one swallow, then set it down harder than necessary. "But your lie is different," he continued. "Your hands do not shake when you pour drinks for killers. Your eyes do not look away when predators stare at you. Most bartenders learn to fear their customers, but you just watched." Jin-ho continued cleaning glasses. He had learned to let people talk themselves out. Sometimes they revealed more than they meant to toy. "Think you were a soldier," Thax said, leaning closer. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow seemed more dangerous than his normal tone. Jin-ho finally looked up and met the Valkyrie eyes directly. For just a moment something flickered in his own eyes, something cold and distant like starlight maybe. "I was," Jin-ho said quietly, "but that was a long time ago." Thax smiled, showing teeth that were designed for tearing meat. "Time does not change what a warrior is," he said. "A warrior is always a warrior, even when he pretends to be something else." The other customers in the bar had gone very quiet. Everyone could feel the tension building like electricity before a storm. Mei the trader had stopped pretending to read her datapad. Kong the mechanic had his hand near the tool that could be used as a weapon. Old Su was slowly moving toward the door. Jin-ho set down the glass he had been cleaning and looked around the room. These people came here because it was safe. They trusted that nothing bad would happen to them in his bar. "That is where you are wrong," Jin-ho said to Thax. His voice was still quiet, but now it had an edge. "Like a blade, a warrior chooses when to fight. A killer just fights." Thax finished his drink and studied Jin-ho for a long moment. "We will see," the Valkyrie said finally. "We will see what kind of man you really are." He walked back to his table where his warriors were getting louder and more drunk. They started telling stories about fights they had won and enemies they had killed. Their voices got rougher and their laughter got meaner. Jin-ho went back to cleaning glasses, but now his movements were different, more careful, more ready. His eyes swept the room, constantly checking exits and counting weapons. He looked like a man who was preparing for something. The regular customers started leaving one by one. They could feel the danger building, and they knew better than to stay when predators were on the hunt. Mei paid for her wine quickly and left without saying goodbye. Kong nodded to Jin-ho and slipped out the back door. Old Sue had already disappeared soon. Only Jin-ho, the Valkyrie warriors, and a few strangers remained. The bar felt empty and cold. Despite the flickering light, Stax and his warriors kept drinking, and their stories kept getting darker. They talked about raids on peaceful colonies and fights with ships full of families. They seemed to enjoy remembering the fear in their victims. Jin-ho listened to every word. His face showed nothing, but something was building inside him. Something he had tried to bury for 3 years. Something that remembered what it felt like to stop bad things from happening to good people. The night was getting darker and the Valkyrie were getting more dangerous, and Jin-ho was getting ready for whatever came next. The door to the last drop opened with a soft hiss, and so Jin walked in. Her work clothes were dirty with engine oil, and her face looked tired, like she had been working all day. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair that stuck to her forehead from sweat. Jin-ho knew her. She came to the bar maybe once a week when she had enough credits for a cheap meal and water. She was trying to keep an old cargo ship running while saving money to send home to her sick mother on Earth. It was not an easy life, but she never complains. So Jin looked around the nearly empty bar and noticed the Valkyrie warriors sitting at their table. She hesitated for a moment, then walked to the counter anyway. She needed food, and this was the only place she could afford. Just some protein bars and water, she said quietly to Jin-ho. Her voice was tired but polite. She always said please and thank you, even when she was exhausted. Jin-ho nodded and reached under the counter for the food. She always ordered the same thing, the cheapest meal that would keep her going for another day. He never charged her full price, but he did it quietly so she would not feel embarrassed. The Valkyrie had been watching her since she walked in. Now one of them, a younger warrior with fresh scars on his arms, stood up from the table. His name was Drex, and he was the kind of warrior who liked to prove how tough he was. Look what walked in, Drex said loud enough for everyone to hear. A pretty little human feeling. Jin tried to ignore him. She had dealt with this kind of trouble before. The best thing to do was stay quiet and hope they got bored. She focused on unwrapping her protein bar with hands that only shook a little, but Drex was not the type to be ignored. He walked over to the bar with slow, heavy steps like a predator stalking prey. His claws clicked against the metal floor with each step. The sound made So Jin flinch. I am talking to you, human, Drex said. When he reached the bar, he was close enough that So Jin could smell his breath. It smelled like rotting meat and strong alcohol. So Jin looked up at him, trying to keep her face calm. Please, I just want to eat my food and leave. The other Valkyrie warriors laughed from their table. They made crude jokes about what they wanted to do with a human woman. Their leader, Thax, watched with interest like he was enjoying a Rex reached out and grabbed So Jin's shoulder with one clawed hand. His grip was tight enough to hurt, but not tight enough to tear her clothes. "You two will show respect when warriors speak to you," he said. His yellow eyes gleamed with something ugly. So Jin tried to pull away, but Drek's grip was too strong. She was a mechanic, not a fighter. Her only weapon was a small plasma cutter on her belt, but it was designed for cutting metal, not fighting aliens who were trained to kill. "Please let me go," she said again. Her voice was smaller now. Fear was starting to show through her calm masks from behind the bar. Jin-ho watched everything. His hands had stopped moving. His eyes were focused on Drek's hand on So-Jin's shoulder. Something cold and dangerous was waking up inside him. Something he had tried to keep sleeping for 3 years. Stack stood up from his table and walked over. He was bigger than Drex and covered in more scars. His presence made the air feel heavier. "My friend Drex has good taste," he said, looking So-Jin up and down like she was something to buy. "Maybe we should take this one back to our ship for some entertainments." Other warriors laughed harder and made more disgusting suggestions about what they would do to their human prisoner. So-Jin's face went white. She looked around desperately for help, but the bar was almost empty. The few remaining customers were looking away, pretending they could not see what was happening. Nobody wanted to fight Valkyrie warriors, not even to help an innocent woman. So Jin's hand moved toward the plasma cutter on her belt, but she knew it would not help her against 4 trained killers. She was trapped, and everyone knew it except Jin-ho. Set down the glass he had been holding. The movement was slow and careful, like everything he did. But now there was something different about him. The air around him seemed to change, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Let her go," Jin-ho said. His voice was quiet like always, but now it carried something else. Something that made Drek stop laughing and look at him with surprise at this pathetic human. "Just give me an order," Drek said. He tightened his grip on So-Jin's shoulder, making her gasp with pain. "Maybe I should teach you some manners before I deal with your friend." The other Valkyrie warriors were paying attention now. They could sense that something was about to happen. Thak's hand moved toward the weapon on his back. His hunting instincts were telling him that the quiet bartender might be dangerous. "Last warning," Jin-ho said. His hands rested on the bar counter, but his body was perfectly balanced like a spring ready to release. "Let her go and walk away, so Jin stared at Jin-ho in amazement. She had always thought he was just a quiet man who served drinks. She had no idea that he was capable of standing up to alien warriors, but something in his voice made her believe that he could protect her. You dare threaten Valkyrie warriors? Thax snarled. Now he was really angry. This human bartender was challenging them in front of witnesses that could not be allowed. The entire bar had gone silent. Even the background music seemed to fade away. Everyone could feel that violence was coming. The few remaining customers started moving toward the exits, but they moved slowly, trying not to attract attention. Drex laughed, but it sounded forced. Now he was still holding Sojin, but his other hand moved toward his weapon. I think it is time someone taught you humans your place in the galaxy, he said. Jin-ho eyes met Sojin eyes in the mirror behind the bar. She saw something there that she had never seen before. It was not anger. Exactly, it was more like the calm before a storm, like the moment when a predator decides to strike. What happened next would change everything. The quiet bartender who had served drinks for 3 years was about to disappear, and something much more dangerous was about to take his place. The Valkyrie warriors thought they were about to teach a lesson to a weak human. They had no idea that they were about to meet one of the most deadly fighters in the galaxy. Jin-ho had tried to leave his old life behind, but his old life was about to come roaring back. The storm was about to break, and when it did, the aliens would learn why humans were feared across the stars. So Jin held her breath and waited. The warriors raised their weapons and prepared to fight, and Jin-ho got ready to remind the galaxy why they called him the Ghost of Soul. What happened next took 3 seconds, but it felt like time had slowed down for everyone watching. Jin-ho moved. His left hand shot forward faster than a striking snake. It hit a spot on Drex's wrist that made the warrior's entire arm go numb instantly. The grip on Sojin's shoulder disappeared as Drex's hand opened against his will. At the same moment, Jin-ho's right hand grabbed a heavy bottle from behind the bar. The bottle was full of Rigel whiskey and weighed as much as a small weapon. Jin-ho threw it with perfect aim. The bottle hit Drex in the side of the head with a sound like thunder. The 8-foot-tall warrior crashed to the floor unconscious before he even knew what had happened. His body hit the metal ground so hard it shook the whole. Barthax tried to pull his plasma rifle from his back, but Jin-ho was already moving. The quiet bartender vaulted over the counter like he was dancing. His feet barely touched the bar top as he flipped through the air when Jin-ho landed. He was no longer the same person Sojin had known for months. The calm bartender was gone. In his place stood something that moved like liquid death. Every step was perfect. Every movement had a purpose. Fet was fast for a Valkyrie warrior, but Jin-ho was faster. The human hit him in the stomach with a strike that folded the alien leader in half. Then Jin-ho's hand came down on the back of Thak's neck, and the warrior dropped like a stone to down in less than 5 seconds. The other 3 Valkyrie finally realized they were in serious trouble. They fumbled for their weapons, but alcohol and shock made them slow. Jin-ho moved between them like smoke. The first warrior managed to draw his plasma pistol, but Jin-ho was already there. A palm strike shattered the weapon and broke the warrior's wrist. At the same time, the alien screamed and fell backward into a table that collapsed under his weight. The second warrior tried to grab Jin-ho from behind, but the human seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He spun around and drove his elbow into the warrior's knee. There was a wet snapping sound, and the Valkyrie crashed to the floor, clutching his broken leg. The last warrior was a female named Kresh. She was the smartest of the group and the most sober. She had her plasma pistol out and pointed at Jin-ho's chest, but her hands were shaking. "You are not just a bartender," she whispered. Her voice was filled with fear and something else, recognitions. Jin-ho stood perfectly still in the center of the destroyed bar. His breathing was calm and steady, like he had just finished a light workout instead of defeating 4 dangerous aliens in hand-to-hand combat. "No, those moves," Krish continued. Her voice got quieter as the terrible truth hit her. "I have seen recordings of them in military training. You are him. You are the Ghost of Soul." The name hit the bar like a physical force, so Jin gasped and took a step backward. The few remaining customers who had not fled stared at Jin-ho with new eyes. The Ghost of Soul was a legend, a story told in whispers across the galaxy during the Great War. 15 years ago, he had been Earth's most deadly weapon, a single human who could end battles that had killed thousands of soldiers. He had walked through enemy lines like they were not there. He had destroyed entire military bases without anyone seeing him coming. He had ended 3 different wars by killing the right people at the right time, and now he was standing in a dirty bar on Nexus Station, having just defeated 4 Valkyrie warriors with his bare hands. So Jin remembered the stories she had heard as a child. Stories about a human ghost who protected Earth colonies from alien raiders. Stories about impossible missions and victories that should not have been possible, but those were just stories, except they were not. "Please," Kresh begged, lowering her weapon. "We did not know. If we had known who you were, we never would not have." What? Jin-ho interrupted. His voice was still calm, but now it carried the weight of authority. "You would not have threatened an innocent woman. You would not have planned to hurt her." His eyes swept the bar, taking in the destruction and the unconscious warriors. "Your ignorance of who I am is not the problem. Here the problem is what you planned to do to someone who could not defend herself." So Jin stared at the man she thought she knew. The quiet bartender who had served her cheap meals and never asked for anything in return was one of the most feared Humans in the galaxy, how is that possibly? Around the bar, other customers began to whisper. They shared stories they had heard about the ghost of souls. Some were true, some were exaggerated, but all of them painted a picture of a man who had saved countless lives. One story said he had infiltrated a space station with 10,000 enemy soldiers and destroyed it from the inside without anyone knowing he was there. Another story claimed he had ended a siege that had lasted 3 years by walking through the enemy camp and killing their leaders in their sleep. Most famous stories said he had prevented a genocide by stopping an alien fleet that was heading toward a human colony. He had somehow destroyed 20 warships with nothing but sabotage and perfect timing. Jin-Ho listened to the whispers but said nothing. He had heard these stories before. Most of them were not entirely accurate, but they were close enough to the truth. The war is over, he said, finally addressing Kresh, but speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. I came here to retire, to live quietly away from violence. He looked around the bar at the destruction and the unconscious warriors. But that does not mean I will stand by and watch innocent people get hurt. Kresh nodded quickly. She understood that she was alive only because Jin-Ho allowed it. She carefully placed her weapon on the floor and backed away from it. We will leave, she said. We will take our injured and go, and we will never come back. Jin-Ho nodded. That would be wise, as Kresh and a few conscious warriors dragged their unconscious friends toward the door. Jin-Ho turned to So-Jin. She was still staring at him like she had never seen him before. Are you hurt? He asked. His voice was gentle again, almost like the bartender she remembered. So-Jin shook her head slowly. She was not physically hurt, but her world had just been turned upside down. You are really him, she said. It was not a question. Jin-Ho was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up a fallen chair and set it upright. I was him, he said. Finally, now I am just someone who serves drinks and tries to keep people safe. But the galaxy would not let him stay hidden much longer. Word of what had happened would spread, and everyone would know that the ghost of Soul was alive and working. At the last drop, his quiet retirement was over. The silence in the bar was broken only by the groaning of wounded Valkyrie warriors and the soft hum of the air recyclers. Jin-Ho began picking up broken furniture and setting it right like nothing unusual had happened. His movements were calm and methodical, just like when he cleaned glasses. So-Jin watched him work. Her mind was racing with questions, but she did not know how to ask them. How do you talk to a living legend? How do you have a normal conversation with someone who had shaped the course of galactic history? Finally, she found her voice. Why did you stop? She asked. Why did you give up being the ghost of Soul? Jin-Ho paused in his cleaning and looked at her. His eyes were tired, like someone who had seen too much. Because I got tired of ending things, he said. Simply ending wars, ending threats, ending lives. I wanted to try beginning things instead. He gestured around the bar, which despite the recent violence still felt like a safe place. Beginning conversations, beginning friendships, beginning each day hoping it would be peaceful. So Jin understood, but she also felt confused. The man who had just defeated 4 dangerous warriors with his bare hands was talking about peace, like it was the most important thing in the universe. But what about Earth? She asked. What about protecting humanity? Jin-Ho finished setting up a table and sat down across from Harry. Protected humanity for 15 years, he said. I fought in battles across 3 star systems. I prevented massacres and stopped invasions. I saved millions of lives. His voice got quieter. But I also took thousands of lives. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were just soldiers following orders. Some of them were barely adults who had been told humans were monsters. So Jin realized she was hearing something that few people in the galaxy had ever heard, the real story behind the legend, the cost of being a hero. Died. You ever regret it? She asked. Every day, Jin-Ho replied, but I never regretted the lives I saved, only the ones I had to take to save them. Outside the bar, they could hear the sound of the wounded Valkyrie being helped onto their ship. The news of what had happened would spread quickly through the station and then throughout the sector. Jin-Ho knew what was coming. He had hoped for a few more years of peace, but that hope was gone now. Within hours, everyone in the criminal underworld would know that the ghost of Soul was alive and working at the last drop. Some would flee in terror, others would come to test him, still others would seek his help. The quiet life he had built was about to become much more complicated. So Jin seemed to read his thoughts. What will you do now? She asked. Jin-Ho was quiet for a long moment. He looked around the bar at the evidence of violence and the promise of more to come. I will do what I have always done, he said finally. Protect people who cannot protect themselves, but this time it will be different. This time I choose who I protect and how I protect them. This time I am not following orders from generals or politicians. He looked directly at So-Jin this time. I am just a bartender who happens to be very good at stopping bad people. So-Jin smiled for the first time since the fight began. Can I help? She asked. Jin-Ho raised an eyebrow. You want to help a retired assassin run a bar? Want to help a good man keep people safe? So-Jin replied. And besides, someone needs to make sure you actually serve drinks instead of just fighting aliens. Despite everything, Jin-Ho found himself smiling too. It might be dangerous, he warned. People will come here looking for trouble. Some will want to challenge me, others will want to hire me, still others will want revenge. So Jin shrugged. I have been fixing broken stuff with faulty reactors for 3 years, she said. I think I can handle serving drinks to dangerous customers. Jin-Ho nodded slowly. He realized he did not want to face what was coming alone. Having someone he could trust would make the difficult days ahead more bearable. "All right," he said, "but we do this my way. The bar remains neutral territory. Anyone can come here for drinks and food, but violence is not allowed. And if someone breaks that rule," so Jin asked, "then they learn why the galaxy used to fear the ghost of Soul." Jin-ho replied. Over the next few hours, word spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. The story grew with each telling. In some versions, Jin-ho had fought 20 warriors, and others he had killed them all with his bare hands. Truth was impressive enough, but legends always grew larger than life. By morning, there was a line of people outside the last drop. Some were curiosity seekers who wanted to see the legendary ghost of Soul. Others were refugees and traders who had heard that the bar was now the safest place on the station. Jin-ho and so Jin worked together to serve the crowd. She handled the drinks while he kept watch for trouble. It was strange how quickly they fell into a rhythm, like they had been working together for years. A group of human traders approached the bar nervously. One of them finally worked up the courage to speak. "Is it true?" they asked. "Are you really the ghost of Soul?" Jin-ho set down the glass he was cleaning and looked at them. "I am Jin-ho," he said. "I serve drinks and keep the peace in this establishment." "But the stories," the trader pressed, "are they true?" "Some of them," Jin-ho replied. "But those stories are about someone I used to be. Now I am just a bartender who wants to keep his customers safe." The traders nodded and ordered their drinks. They seemed satisfied with his answer, but Jin-ho knew the questions would keep coming throughout the day. He heard whispers and saw pointing fingers. Everyone wanted to know if the legends were true. Everyone wanted to see the man who had once been the most feared human in the galaxy. Jin-ho served drinks and listened to conversations and tried to adjust to his new reality. He was no longer anonymous. He could never again be just a quiet bartender, but maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to use his reputation for something good. Maybe the ghost of Soul could protect people in a different way. As the sun set over Nexus Station, Jin-ho looked around his bar. It was full of people from dozens of different species, all drinking and talking peacefully for the first time in 3 years. He felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 3 weeks after the fight with the Valkyrie warriors, the last drop had become the most famous bar in the sector. Ships came from across the galaxy, just so their crews could say they had drinks served by the ghost of Soul. But fame brought problems. Every day someone new walked through the door looking for trouble. Young warriors wanted to test themselves against the legend. Criminals thought they could make a name for themselves by defeating the famous human assassin. Bounty hunters arrived hoping to collect old warrants that might still be active. Jin-ho handled each challenge the same way. He gave one warning, then he ended the fight quickly and efficiently. Most troublemakers found themselves unconscious on the floor before they understood what had happened. The ones who survived spread the word that the ghost of Soul had not gotten soft in retirement, so Jin had become his partner in more than just serving drinks. She had a talent for reading people and could spot potential trouble before it started. She also had a way of calming nervous customers and making them feel welcome together. They created something special. The last drop became known as neutral ground, where anyone could come for a safe drink and a peaceful meal. Even sworn enemies could sit at the same bar without fighting as long as they followed Jin-ho rules. One evening, a group of refugees arrived at the station. They were humans who had escaped from a mining colony that had been attacked by pirates there. The ship was damaged and they had no money for repairs or food. Jin-ho served them free meals, and so Jin helped them contact repair services. The refugees were amazed that the legendary ghost of Soul was helping them with such ordinary problems. "This is not what I expected," one of them said. "I thought you would be more." What? Jin-ho asked. "I don't know," the refugee replied. "More scary, more dangerous." Jin-ho smiled. "I am exactly as dangerous as I need to be," he said, "but I am only dangerous to people who hurt innocent others." The refugee nodded and seemed to understand. As word spread about what Jin-ho was doing, more people came to the station seeking help. Traders who had been cheated by corrupt officials, families fleeing from war zones, workers who had been enslaved by criminal organizations. Jin-ho could not help them all, but he helped as many as he could. Sometimes he used his reputation to scare off bad people. Sometimes he used his contacts from his military days to find safe passage for refugees. Sometimes he just listened to their stories and gave them hope. So Jin watched him work and began to understand something important. The ghost of Soul had never really been about killing enemies. It had been about protecting people. The violence was just a tool he used when other methods failed. One night after the bar closed, so Jin asked him a question that had been bothering her. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Do you miss the war?" Jin-ho was quiet for a long time as he cleaned glasses and put away bottles. "I miss the certainty," he said finally. "During the war, I always knew who the enemy was and what I had to do. The choices were simple, even if they were hard." He looked around the bar at the evidence of another peaceful day. "This is more complicated," he continued. "Every day I have to decide who to help and how to help them. Every day I have to choose between being the ghost of Soul and being Jin-ho, the bartender. Which one do you want to be?" So Jin asked. Jin-ho stopped cleaning and looked at Harry. "Want to be both," he said. "I want to be someone who can serve drinks and tell stories and make people feel safe. But I also want to be someone who can stop the really bad things from happening to good people." So Jin understood. He was trying to find a balance between the warrior he had been and the peaceful man he wanted to be. Next morning brought a new challenge. A ship arrived carrying a delegation from the Galactic Council. They wanted to meet with the Ghost of Soul about a new crisis that threatened several human colonies. Jinho listened to their request but refused to leave the station. "I'm retired," he told them firmly. "My fighting days are over, but thousands of lives are at stake." The lead diplomat argued you could end this conflict in days, maybe hours. Jinho shook his head. "There are other ways to solve problems," he said. "Ways that don't involve killing people." The diplomats left disappointed, but Jinho felt good about his decision. He had chosen peace over violence, even when violence might have been easier that evening. So Jin brought up the subject while they were closing the bar. "Maybe you could have helped them," she said, "without fighting. Maybe you could have found a peaceful solution." Jinho paused. "In his work, maybe," he admitted, "but once I leave this place, once I become the Ghost of Soul again, it will be harder to come back to being just Gin Hoso." Gin nodded. She understood his fear that using his old skills would pull him back into a life he was trying to escape. "But what if people really need your help?" she asked. "What if there is no other way?" Jinho was quiet for a long moment. "Then I will have to decide if protecting others is worth the risk of losing myself," he said. As the days passed, more requests for help arrived. Some Jinho could handle from the bar using his reputation and contacts. Others required him to refuse people who desperately needed his skills. It was a difficult balance, but Jinho was learning to live with it. Last Drop had become more than just a bar. It was a symbol of hope in a dangerous galaxy, a place where the famous Ghost of Soul chose to serve drinks instead of dealing death. And maybe that was the most important victory of all, not the battles he had won or the enemies he had defeated, but the choice to use his power to create peace instead of just ending wars. Jinho looked around his bar filled with customers from dozens of different worlds, all sharing drinks and stories in safety. This was his new mission, and for the first time in his life, he was completely at peace with his choice. The Ghost of Soul had found his home.